So when I was in high school, I remember watching How I Met Your Mother, and I had a funny thought. What if this show ends with the mother dying? I remember having this thought, and then the next episode came with this dramatic ending.
I want this extra 45 days.
At which point, I was kind of like, yeah, so she's 100% dead. Anyway, I remember telling my friend Chris this at the time, and he just looked at me, smiled, and confidently told me that I was completely wrong. Anyway, skip forward a little bit and the show came to an end. And I was right! Anyway, I remember talking to Chris about this next time I saw him. And he said, "You didn't say that." Anyway, it's roughly been 6 years since this happened. And I am still salty about it! Chris still contests the truth of this narrative till this day. Hi, I'm Angry Eyes, and today I'll be discussing my theory for the ending of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So this is not the ending. Maybe. It hasn't finished yet. It will in like a week, so this video might be wrong and completely pointless. But hey, this is fun and I like talking about TV shows and their themes. And if you do, you should totally tap that subscribe button. Anyway, this is my prediction. Jake's gonna quit the police force. And I think he'll be totally justifiable. Now the finale is coming out next week, so I could be completely wrong here. And if I am, just comment that down below. But in the meantime, just hear me out. So in my opinion, without a doubt, Rose is smarter than Jake.
Out of my way, chunk.
We can argue the semantics of this in the comments down below, but also once again, in the meantime, hear me out. We never really find out how many cases each of them solve comparatively. With the exception of season 1, when it's mentioned that Jake closes the most cases,
Peralta is my best detective. He loves solving puzzles.
we never found out by how many, or even the difficulty of those cases compared to Rose's. But what we can do is compare what they're like when they're on the same case. And without a doubt, Rose is quicker.
Hey, guess what? I got a new lead to ask my perv about is a drug dealer on State Street.
Jake might solve a lot of these cases, but a lot of the basic facts are proven by Rosa. Usually when Jake figures something out, it's initially preceded by Rosa pointing that thing out. And that's not always limited to just case stuff.
It's too late.
Has she done the double tuck yet?
But that's also sort of my point. Jake has a tendency to follow Rosa.
If you see Rosa jump off a cliff, by all means, jump off a cliff.
You jump off a cliff.
Gladly. Provided Rosa did first.
This also isn't necessarily just a thing about Rosa being quicker than Jake, but rather how a lot of their career storylines intersect. They meet at the police academy, they join the same precinct, they even get framed and sent to jail at the same time. The only real exception was in season 1 when Jake was fired and sent undercover. That seems to be more the exception opposed to the rule. So having Rosa actually quit leaves an uneven feeling to the series, but she quits. And when she quits, she tells Jake why, which leaves him a little...
Maybe I am part of the problem.
But that's the effect Rosa has on Jake. Once she points something out, Jake can no longer not see that thing. And this realization follows Jake for the rest of the season. In Blue Fever, he has to prove that fellow officers are faking a sickness to prevent a suspension of a bad cop, and he continually makes the same uncomfortable face throughout the entire episode. Then in Balancing, Jake seems extremely unenthusiastic about working for the police. And then there's this episode, the setup. Not to say too much about this because I want to talk about it in a minute in much broader strokes, but after dealing with a union rep, he once again makes this uncomfortable face. It's not that all these bad things are just happening around Jake this season. These events aren't that different from the rest of his career. It's just now he's noticing them. He's seeing them in a different light. He's no longer seeing a corrupt individual causing damage and harm, but a symptom of a broken and corrupt system. The biggest demonstration of this is how he deals with the Pontiac Bandit this season. Believe it or not, Jake's beliefs are best demonstrated in the Pontiac Bandit episodes. Every episode, every season, Jake tries to deal with the Pontiac Bandit in a just way within the system, whilst the Pontiac Bandit usually tries to tempt him the other way. He originally tries to capture him with the system, then free him through the system, and then even deals with his bridal party through the system. Let's talk about this episode in particular. The Pontiac Bandit's bridal party commit a crime in front of Jake. So what does Jake do? He tries to arrest them. Then in an attempt to help Jake, the Pontiac Bandit tries to pull a reverse heist and decides to call it even. Except obviously not really. Jake still arrests the majority of the bridal party, which not only extremely uncomfortable for Jake, but nearly compromised his friendship with the Pontiac Bandits. But that's also what I'm saying here. These episodes act as a great demonstration of Jake's moral compass. So now, let's circle back to the episode this season. Already Jake seems uncomfortable with the Force, and once again, the Pontiac Bandit pulls Jake in a morally questionable situation. Except this time, Jake doesn't do right by the system, but rather his friend. He lets the Pontiac Bandit go. And if that's not a clear sign of character development, I don't know what is. Jake was willing to break the law to help his friend. It's a clear sign that Jake doesn't see the law as infallible anymore, and that its outcome isn't always just. But also, this shouldn't really come as a surprise. This has been a long time coming for Jake. Jake's history with the police force has been escalative to say the very least. To start, we're represented with the Vulture, who is abusive of the system and usually found manipulating it for his own benefit, even when that benefit is extremely menial and stupid.
We only solve misdemeanors, wieners. Say it.
We only solve misdemeanors. Wieners.
Congratulations, you just called yourselves wieners.
Then Jake is asked to get fired to go undercover before later finding out that there's corruption within the FBI itself, which he then has to bring to justice, which he then discovers that one of his police idols is also corrupt, who then frames him for a crime he doesn't commit, but in fact does get convicted for. Whilst all of this is going on, Jake has to watch a slightly corrupt commissioner get swapped with an actually corrupt commissioner who breaks privacy laws to only get swapped again for a commissioner who holds a personal grudge against his captain and uses her newly grabbed power to punish his captain however she sees fit. Do you see where this is going? It gets kinda hard to blame the individual when the system continually puts them into place. Honestly, I'm surprised Rosa had to tell him. Imagine looking back through your career and realizing that the system you're defending, the system you're fighting for, to protect and serve, isn't one necessarily of justice. I feel this is even further highlighted in the episode, This Setup. So the villain of this season is the union boss, Frank O'Sullivan. He's meant to represent the corruption of the police force and sort of the old guard.
Julian!
Like most of the villains in this show, he's a hyperbole, exaggerating him as a stereotype so that the audience can easily understand. He bad. He's a bad guy. He does bad guy things. Except now, he bad isn't really good enough. He's not the issue. The issue is the system. So to cut the situation short, Jake is about to get suspended, and rightfully so. He knows this. He knows why he should get suspended. But then O'Sullivan comes marching in and stops his suspension. This puts Jake in an extremely difficult position where he essentially has to agree to get punished. Imagine how hard that would be, to choose and admit that you've done wrong so that you can get punished. Most people wouldn't do it. Jake's one of the good guys, and even he has an extreme difficulty doing it. It kind of highlights the issues with the captain in the first episode. She doesn't want to be the bad guy, but her sense of self-preservation overrides her sense of justice. And as a result, she's able to come up with a million reasons why she shouldn't even attempt to hold one of her officers accountable. The worst part is that this is the moment Jake realizes that there's nothing he can really do about it. So where does that leave us? What's the solution? There isn't one. Well, there isn't really one for Jake. He could bring down O'Sullivan, maybe, but that doesn't really accomplish anything. Taking down O'Sullivan would just be dealing with a symptom of a broken system. He could actively participate in police reform and try to hold his fellow officers accountable, but that's already been covered by Holt and Amy. I also think Jake's at the point where he realizes that he wouldn't be very good at that, and it's far better off in their hands. I think Jake is going to quit the force. I think he is going to quit the force and at best work part-time as a private detective with Rosa, but mainly focus his time looking after his child. The themes of fatherhood and toxic masculinity are ripe in this series, so Jake ending up in a traditionally feminine role whilst also committing to his family would honestly be quite a fitting end for his character, and would match Rosa at the beginning of the series. I really like Brooklyn Nine-Nine as a series. And honestly, I'm a little glad it ended before it jumped the shark. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is an amazing show. It's probably going to end up being one of my comfort shows I watch over and over again as the years go by. And I hope you enjoyed it too. If you agree or disagree, just comment down below. I'm always happy to talk about it. Otherwise, as always, please share, like, and subscribe. It would mean the literal world to me.